What happens when a 24-year age gap becomes a death sentence? When does the line between love and obsession blur so dangerously that it ends in bloodshed? Tonight, I'm bringing you a story that will shake you to your core and force you to question everything you think you know about relationships. On a quiet summer evening in Columbia, Maryland, two lives were about to collide in the most devastating way possible. 23-year-old Ahmad Karma and 47-year-old Shannon Bushner seemed like an unlikely couple, but their relationship was about to take a turn that would leave their community in shock and their family shattered forever. Shannon Bushner wasn't just any 47-year-old woman. She had become what many would call a sugar mama to young Ahmad, providing him with a lifestyle he could never afford on his own. Their home on Summer Blossom Lane was a testament to their unconventional arrangement, a place where age was just a number, or so they believed. But what started as a mutually beneficial relationship was hiding something much darker underneath. The neighbors had no idea that behind the closed doors of their seemingly peaceful neighborhood, a deadly storm was building. The warning signs were there, but nobody saw them coming. On June 30th, 2024, at exactly 8:15 in the evening, an acquaintance made a discovery that would haunt them forever. What they found inside that Columbia home would send shockwaves through Howard County and beyond. Ahmad Karma had made a decision that would end two lives in the most brutal way imaginable. The gun found next to his lifeless body told only part of the story. The real question that investigators are still trying to answer is simple yet terrifying. What could drive a young man to commit such an unthinkable act? What pushed him over the edge? This isn't just another true crime story about a relationship gone wrong. This is a wake-up call about the hidden dangers that can lurk in age-gap relationships, the warning signs we often ignore, and the devastating consequences when obsession takes control. By the end of this video, you'll understand how to protect yourself and your loved ones from similar situations. Stay with me because this story will challenge everything you think you know about love and obsession. Hit that notification bell right now, because what I'm about to reveal will leave you questioning every relationship dynamic you've ever witnessed. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single detail. Ahmad Karma was just 23 years old when he entered into a relationship that would define the final chapter of his life. Shannon Bushner, at 47, was old enough to be his mother, yet she had chosen to become something entirely different: his financial provider, his emotional anchor, and ultimately, his victim. Their relationship represented a growing phenomenon in modern society, the sugar mama dynamic. Unlike traditional relationships built on mutual emotional connection and shared life goals, this arrangement was fundamentally transactional. Shannon provided Ahmad with financial security, a comfortable home, and the lifestyle of someone twice his age. In return, Ahmad offered companionship, youth, and the illusion of romantic love. But what appears glamorous on the surface often conceals a web of psychological complexities that can turn deadly. The power imbalance inherent in such relationships creates a breeding ground for resentment, manipulation, and ultimately violence. Summer Blossom Lane in Columbia, Maryland, epitomized the American dream. Manicured lawns stretched endlessly, children's bicycles dotted driveways, and the sound of lawnmowers hummed peacefully on weekend mornings. This was the kind of neighborhood where families felt safe, where doors remained unlocked, and where tragedy seemed impossible. The house that Ahmad and Shannon shared blended seamlessly into this suburban paradise. From the outside, neighbors saw what appeared to be a successful couple living their best life. Shannon's financial stability was evident in their well-maintained property, the luxury cars in their driveway, and the frequent deliveries that suggested a comfortable lifestyle. But behind those perfectly painted walls and pristine windows, a different reality was taking shape. The age gap that seemed manageable in public became a source of tension in private. Ahmad, still in his early 20s, was navigating life stages that Shannon had completed decades earlier, creating friction that would prove impossible to resolve. The psychology behind sugar mama relationships reveals disturbing patterns that experts have been studying for years. For the younger partner, these arrangements often stem from financial desperation, daddy issues, or a desire for security without the traditional responsibilities of earning it. The older partner, meanwhile, may be seeking validation, control, or the fantasy of recapturing their youth through association. In Ahmad and Shannon's case, these psychological drivers created a toxic foundation. Ahmad likely felt emasculated by his financial dependence, while Shannon may have struggled with the constant need to maintain her younger partner's interest. The power dynamic was inherently unstable. Shannon held the financial cards, but Ahmad possessed the youth and freedom she desperately wanted to reclaim. Research shows that relationships with significant age gaps face unique challenges. Communication barriers emerge when partners are at different life stages. Trust issues develop when motivations are questioned. Most dangerously, resentment builds when one partner feels trapped or exploited, creating conditions ripe for explosive conflict. The warning signs in age gap relationships are often hiding in plain sight, yet friends and family frequently dismiss them as harmless quirks. Financial control becomes the first red flag. When one partner holds all the economic power, the other becomes vulnerable to manipulation and abuse. In Ahmad and Shannon's relationship, this imbalance was fundamental to their dynamic. Isolation represents another critical warning sign. Younger partners in these arrangements often find themselves cut off from peers who can't relate to their lifestyle. Ahmad's friends likely couldn't understand his choices, while Shannon's contemporaries may have judged her relationship harshly. This isolation creates an echo chamber where unhealthy behaviors go unchecked. Emotional manipulation thrives in these environments. The older partner may use their experience to gaslight or control, while the younger partner might exploit their youth as leverage. Have you ever wondered what drives such relationships? What makes someone willing to trade genuine connection for financial security or fleeting youth? The final weeks of June 2024 passed quietly on Summer Blossom Lane, but beneath the surface, something catastrophic was building. Neighbors later recalled that Ahmad seemed more withdrawn than usual, spending less time outside and avoiding the casual conversations that had once been routine. Shannon, meanwhile, appeared increasingly anxious, checking her phone constantly and seeming distracted during brief encounters. What nobody realized was that these subtle changes were actually screaming warnings of impending disaster. Ahmad's withdrawal wasn't just introversion. It was the classic behavior of someone planning something irreversible. His isolation from social interactions suggested he was already mentally separating himself from the world he was about to leave behind. Shannon's heightened anxiety likely stemmed from sensing the shift in their relationship dynamic. Women in controlling relationships often develop an intuitive awareness when danger is approaching, even if they can't articulate exactly what feels wrong. Behavioral patterns in the days before domestic violence incidents follow predictable trajectories that experts have documented extensively. Ahmad likely exhibited increased irritability, mood swings that seemed disproportionate to minor triggers, and a growing sense of entitlement or resentment. These warning signs often manifest as criticism of the partner's appearance, friends, or daily activities. Sleep disturbances are another critical indicator that something dangerous is developing. Perpetrators often experience insomnia or restless sleep as their internal conflict intensifies. Ahmad may have been pacing the house at night, consumed by thoughts he couldn't escape or resolve through normal means. Financial arguments probably escalated during this period, with Ahmad feeling increasingly emasculated by his dependence on Shannon's resources. The shame of being financially supported by an older woman may have reached a breaking point, triggering the masculine rage that would ultimately prove fatal. These seemingly minor disputes about money often mask deeper psychological wounds that can explode without warning. Isolation plays a devastating role in toxic relationships, creating the perfect conditions for violence to flourish unchecked. Ahmad and Shannon's relationship existed in a bubble, cut off from the natural support systems that might have intervened before tragedy struck. Their age difference meant they had few mutual friends who could observe their interactions objectively. Shannon's peers likely disapproved of her relationship choices, causing her to withdraw from longtime friendships rather than face judgment. Ahmad's friends probably couldn't relate to his lifestyle or understand his motivations, leaving him without male role models who might have challenged his thinking. This mutual isolation meant that neither partner had access to outside perspectives that could have provided reality checks. When couples isolate themselves, warning signs that would be obvious to outsiders become normalized within the relationship. Controlling behavior, Emotional manipulation and escalating arguments seem acceptable when there's no external frame of reference to highlight how abnormal the situation has become. Friends and family members often miss crucial warning signs because they don't want to interfere in what appears to be a consensual adult relationship. The reluctance to judge or intervene can be deadly when someone's life hangs in the balance. Shannon's loved ones may have noticed her increased stress levels, changes in her social patterns, or subtle signs of fear, but dismissed them as normal relationship challenges. The most dangerous period in any abusive relationship is when the victim attempts to leave, or when the abuser feels their control slipping away. If Shannon had been considering ending their arrangement, or if Ahmad sensed she was pulling back emotionally or financially, this could have triggered his final desperate act. To protect yourself in similar situations, establish code words with trusted friends, maintain separate financial accounts, and never ignore your instincts when something feels wrong. Trust your gut, it could save your life. June 30th, 2024, started like any other summer evening in Columbia, Maryland. But for one concerned acquaintance, something felt off about Ahmad and Shannon's unusual silence. Phone calls had gone unanswered for days, text messages remained unread, and the normal signs of life around their Summer Blossom Lane home had mysteriously ceased. The decision to check on someone isn't made lightly. This acquaintance had probably wrestled with whether to respect their privacy or trust their growing unease. Maybe they had tried calling one more time, knocked on the door earlier in the day, or asked other mutual friends if they had heard anything. The internal debate between being intrusive and being caring is one that haunts many people in similar situations. By early evening, concern had transformed into genuine worry. The acquaintance made the fateful decision that would change their life forever. They were going to check on Ahmad and Shannon in person, no matter how awkward it might feel. At exactly 8:15 in the evening, the acquaintance approached the front door of the house on Summer Blossom Lane. The neighborhood was settling into its typical evening rhythm, children being called inside for dinner, porch lights flickering on, and the distant sound of television programs drifting through open windows. Everything seemed perfectly normal except for the deathly silence emanating from Ahmad and Shannon's home. The first knock went unanswered, then another, louder this time. The acquaintance probably called out their names, hoping to hear movement from inside or a reassuring voice telling them everything was fine. When silence continued to greet every attempt at contact, a terrible realization began to form. The front door was unlocked, a detail that would later seem both innocent and ominous. In a safe neighborhood like theirs, unlocked doors weren't unusual, but combined with the prolonged silence, it felt like an invitation into something no one should ever have to witness. The acquaintance pushed the door open and stepped inside. What the acquaintance discovered inside that Columbia home will haunt them for the rest of their lives. The scene that greeted them was one of absolute finality. 2 bodies, 2 lives cut short, and evidence of violence that no amount of time will ever erase from their memory. Shannon Bushner lay motionless, her life ended by gunshot wounds that told the story of Ahmad's final, irreversible decision. The 47-year-old woman, who had provided for a younger partner, had become his ultimate victim. Her body's position suggested she may have tried to flee or defend herself, but against a determined attacker with a firearm, she had no chance. Ahmad Karma's body was found nearby, the gun that ended both their lives lying close to his lifeless form. The 23-year-old had chosen to take his own life, rather than face the consequences of his actions. The murder-suicide was complete, leaving behind only questions, trauma, and the devastating task of making sense of senseless violence. The psychological impact on the person who made this discovery cannot be overstated. In an instant, they went from being a concerned friend to being the first witness of a double tragedy that would make headlines across Maryland. The human mind isn't equipped to process such sudden, violent death, especially when it involves people you knew personally. Trauma experts explain that discovering a crime scene triggers immediate psychological responses, shock, disbelief, and often a strained sense of unreality, where the brain struggles to accept what the eyes are seeing. The acquaintance likely experienced tunnel vision, difficulty breathing, and the overwhelming urge to both flee and help simultaneously. The guilt that follows such discoveries is profound and long-lasting. Survivors often torture themselves with what-if scenarios, What if they had checked sooner? What if they had recognized the warning signs? What if they had intervened differently? This survivor's guilt can persist for years, requiring professional counseling to process and overcome. What would you have done in this situation? Let me know in the comments below. Howard County Police received the emergency call at 8:15 p.m. on June 30th, and within minutes, multiple units were racing towards Summer Blossom Lane. The responding officers arrived to find a scene that would test even their most experienced investigators. The quiet suburban neighborhood had been transformed into an active crime scene, with yellow tape cordoning off the home where 2 lives had ended in violence. Detective units immediately secured the perimeter while forensic specialists began their meticulous work. Every detail mattered: the position of the bodies, blood spatter patterns, fingerprints on surfaces, and most critically, the firearm that lay near Ahmad's lifeless form. The investigation team knew they were dealing with an apparent murder-suicide, but they couldn't make assumptions until the evidence told the complete story. The initial assessment confirmed their worst fears. This was indeed a domestic violence incident that had escalated to the ultimate tragedy, leaving no survivors to explain what had driven Ahmad to such desperate measures. The gun found near Ahmad Karma became the centerpiece of the forensic investigation. Ballistics experts would later confirm that this single weapon was responsible for ending both lives, with gunshot residue on Ahmad's hands supporting the murder-suicide theory. The firearm's registration, purchase history, and how it came to be in their home would provide crucial insights into the planning behind this tragedy. Forensic analysis revealed that Shannon had suffered multiple gunshot wounds, suggesting Ahmad's attack was deliberate and sustained rather than a single moment of rage. The trajectory of the bullets and blood evidence painted a horrifying picture of her final moments, indicating she may have attempted to escape or defend herself before succumbing to her injuries. Ahmad's single self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head demonstrated his determination to avoid facing justice for his actions. The close-range nature of this wound left no doubt about his intentions. He had chosen death over accountability, leaving investigators to reconstruct his motives from the silent evidence left behind. Reconstructing the timeline of events proved challenging without witnesses or survivors, but forensic evidence began revealing the sequence of that fatal evening. Based on body temperature, rigor mortis, and other biological indicators, investigators estimated the murders occurred several hours before the 8:15 p.m. discovery, likely during the late afternoon or early evening hours. The crime scene suggested the violence began in the main living area of the home, where Shannon may have been confronted by Ahmad during what appeared to be a normal evening routine. Overturned furniture and defensive wounds on Shannon's body indicated a struggle had taken place, though the outcome was never in doubt given Ahmad's weapon advantage. Phone records and digital evidence from their devices would later reveal whether there had been any final communications, arguments via text, or searches that might explain Ahmad's mental state. The investigation team meticulously documented every piece of potential evidence, knowing that understanding the why behind this tragedy was crucial for preventing similar incidents in the future. The mystery of motive remained the most perplexing aspect of the investigation. What could drive a 23-year-old man to murder the woman who had provided him with shelter, financial support, and companionship? Investigators explored multiple theories: financial disputes, relationship conflicts, mental health crises, or the discovery of infidelity could all serve as potential triggers. Ahmad's social media accounts, text messages, and recent behavior patterns became crucial evidence in understanding his psychological state. Friends and family members were interviewed extensively, searching for any indication of escalating anger, depression, or violent tendencies that might explain his actions. The age gap in their relationship added another layer of complexity to the investigation. Without a suicide note or clear confession, investigators had to rely on circumstantial evidence and behavioral analysis to understand Ahmad's motivations. The lack of a clear motive made this case particularly disturbing. If there were no obvious warning signs, how could similar tragedies be prevented in the future? This tragic case wasn't an isolated incident in Maryland. Just months earlier, in April 2024, Baltimore County had been shaken by a remarkably similar murder-suicide involving 59-year-old Karen Franklin and 63-year-old Gary Franklin. Police had responded to an assault call on Avery Hill Drive in Owings Mills, only to discover both victims dead from gunshot wounds in what investigators determined was another domestic violence murder-suicide. The Franklin case shared disturbing parallels with Ahmad and Shannon's tragedy. Intimate partner violence escalating to fatal conclusions, firearms as the weapon of choice, and the perpetrator's decision to avoid justice through suicide. These cases highlighted a growing pattern of domestic violence incidents ending in the most extreme way possible. Maryland's law enforcement agencies began recognizing that murder-suicides in intimate relationships were becoming an alarming trend, requiring specialized training and intervention strategies to identify at-risk couples before violence erupted. The similarities between these cases couldn't be ignored or dismissed as coincidence. Murder-suicides in intimate relationships represent one of the most devastating forms of domestic violence, and the statistics are more alarming than most people realize. According to the Violence Policy Center, approximately 1,000 to 1,500 murder-suicides occur annually in the United States, with the vast majority involving intimate partners or family members. These cases follow predictable patterns that researchers have identified through decades of study. 94% of murder-suicide perpetrators are male, and firearms are used in approximately 75% of cases. The victims are overwhelmingly female intimate partners, often women who were attempting to leave abusive relationships or had recently ended them. What makes murder-suicides particularly tragic is their preventability. Unlike random acts of violence, these incidents typically involve escalating patterns of abuse, control, and threats that could be identified and addressed through proper intervention. The perpetrators often exhibit warning signs weeks or months before the final violent act, yet these signals are frequently missed or dismissed by those around them. Maryland's gun violence epidemic reached devastating heights in 2023, with 734 firearm deaths recorded by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. This staggering number represents more than just statistics. Each death was someone's child, parent, partner, or friend whose life was cut short by preventable violence. Of these 734 deaths, 63% were homicides, while 36% were suicides, revealing the dual nature of America's gun violence crisis. The remaining 1% included accidental deaths and undetermined cases. These numbers place Maryland among the states grappling with significant firearm mortality rates despite having some of the nation's stricter gun control laws. The Ahmad and Shannon case fits perfectly into these tragic statistics, representing both the homicide and suicide categories that dominate Maryland's gun death data. Their deaths weren't just personal tragedies. They were part of a larger public health crisis that demands immediate attention and comprehensive solutions from lawmakers, mental health professionals, and community leaders. The psychology behind murder-suicide cases reveals disturbing patterns that mental health experts have studied extensively. Perpetrators typically exhibit narcissistic traits, an inability to accept rejection, and a distorted sense of ownership over their victims. They view their partners as possessions rather than independent human beings with the right to make their own choices. Depression and suicidal ideation often precede these violent acts, but unlike typical suicide cases, the perpetrator's depression is externalized into rage against others. They blame their partners for their emotional pain and decide that if they cannot have them, no one can. This twisted logic transforms personal despair into homicidal violence. Control issues dominate these relationships long before violence erupts. The perpetrator gradually isolates their victim from support systems, monitors their activities, and uses financial, emotional, or physical intimidation to maintain dominance. When this control is threatened through breakup attempts, financial independence, or outside intervention, the risk of lethal violence increases dramatically. There are critical warning signs that viewers should never ignore, whether in their own relationships or those of people they care about. Extreme jealousy and possessiveness often escalate gradually, starting with seemingly romantic gestures like constant texting or surprise visits that eventually become surveillance and control. Threats of suicide or violence, even if dismissed as dramatic outbursts, should always be taken seriously. Financial control represents another major red flag. When one partner restricts access to money, credit cards, or employment opportunities, They're creating conditions for abuse. Isolation from friends and family members isn't accidental. It's a deliberate strategy to eliminate potential sources of help or reality checks about the relationship's unhealthy dynamics. Physical violence doesn't always precede murder-suicide cases, but emotional abuse, intimidation, and threats almost always do. Partners who monitor phone calls, emails, or social media activity are demonstrating the obsessive control that can explode into lethal violence. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. The tragic deaths of Ahmad and Shannon Bushner offer crucial lessons that could save lives if we're willing to learn from their story. The most important takeaway is that domestic violence doesn't discriminate based on age, income, or social status. It can happen to anyone, anywhere, and the warning signs are often hiding in plain sight. Trust your instincts above all else. If something feels wrong in your relationship or someone else's, don't dismiss those feelings as paranoia or overreaction. Your subconscious mind often picks up on danger signals before your rational mind can process them. That uncomfortable feeling in your stomach when your partner gets angry, the way you find yourself walking on eggshells to avoid conflict, or the gradual isolation from friends and family are all valid concerns that deserve attention. Age gap relationships require extra vigilance because power imbalances create unique vulnerabilities. When one partner is significantly older and financially established, the younger partner may feel trapped or obligated to accept unacceptable behavior. Financial dependence becomes a weapon that can be used to control, manipulate, and ultimately harm. If you're in such a relationship, maintain your own bank account, keep important documents accessible, and never surrender complete financial control to anyone. The red flags specific to age gap relationships include excessive gift giving early in the relationship, attempts to isolate you from peers who might question the dynamic, and any partner who uses their age or experience to dismiss your concerns or feelings. Healthy relationships involve mutual respect regardless of age differences, while toxic ones use age as a tool for dominance and control. If you're in a dangerous situation right now, resources are available to help you escape safely. The National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 provides 24-hour confidential support and safety planning. Local law enforcement agencies have specialized domestic violence units trained to handle these situations with sensitivity and expertise. Create a safety plan before you need it. Identify trusted friends or family members who can provide emergency shelter. Keep copies of important documents in a secure location outside your home, and establish code words that signal you need help without alerting your abuser. Remember that leaving an abusive relationship is often the most dangerous time, so professional guidance is essential. Maryland's new violence reduction plan represents hope for preventing tragedies like Ahmad and Shannon's. The three-pillar approach focusing on prevention, intervention, and community healing acknowledges that domestic violence is a public health crisis requiring comprehensive solutions rather than just criminal justice responses. Like this video if it opened your eyes to the hidden dangers that can lurk in seemingly normal relationships. Subscribe for more true crime analysis that goes beyond storytelling to provide practical safety information. Share this video to help others recognize warning signs that could save their lives or the lives of people they care about.